You are looking live at Omaha, Nebraska. Specifically, you're looking live here at the D1 baseball team previewing the 2025 College World Series. We're here at Charles Schwab Field. We're going to preview the bracket. We're going to talk about some key players. We're going to talk about how every team arrived here. We're going to talk about how each team could win the whole thing, including the Murray State Racers. We're going to talk about all of that by the time we get out of here today. First off, let me introduce the panel here, my esteemed colleagues. East Texas's own Kendall Rogers, the pride of Leominster, Mass, Aaron Fitt, and the whiz kid, Bradley Smart. I'm Joe Healy. I'm going to guide you through this show here today. But first, before we get to anything else, Kendall, we've got a word from Wilson.
Yeah, if you're at the College World Series this week, guys, make sure you check out the Omaha Experience. Jack Doe and the crew will take care of you. They are set up with an air-conditioned store right across the street from the ballpark, and you will find EvoShield, Louisville Slugger, DeMarini, and Wilson all under one roof with limited edition gloves, gear, apparel, and more. Only available at the Men's College World Series. And by the way, you can also get the special Chinook Cedary glove. The Hatch Chili glove is the one I chose this morning. They had those. It's one of those funny things, guys. I remember, like, as a kid, you walk in these stores, like a glove store, and you would see brown glove after brown glove or a black glove. It's all purple, pink, and then this. So go check them out.
That is a loud glove. Suffice it to say, that is a loud glove.
Hatch Chili, by the way, to give Chinook Cedary a shameless plug. Hatch Chili is by far the best seed.
Get out of here.
I have heard rumors, though, if you mix barbecue with the Hatch Chili, it's like incredible, but I have not done that.
There's a lot of mixing and matching you can do.
One last thing. I would like to reiterate the first line Kendall said. That is an air-conditioned store.
Yeah.
Air-conditioned store. Those are three key words this week.
You know, typically I go to Omaha from Texas, and you'd be like, oh, it's going to be much cooler. It's not much cooler here, guys.
Yeah, it's pretty warm. All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. We're going to start, obviously, with Bracket 1. We're going to take a look at the four teams involved there. That is Arizona, Coastal Carolina, a rematch of the 2016 finals here. That's kind of a fun little storyline. Then we'll talk Louisville and Oregon State, a couple of old blood Omaha teams that were here a lot the previous decade. So we're going to kick it over to Kendall first. Kendall, tell us a little bit about Arizona.
Yeah, I have some history with Arizona. You know, I saw them opening weekend at Globe Life. They weren't very good that weekend. They struggled. Chip Hell was just like, hey, it wasn't our weekend, but I have a lot of faith this team's going to turn out to be really good. His hunch proved to be right. I saw them a few weeks later at Minute Maid, and they looked much different. They were much more fluid offensively. Pitching-wise, Smith Bailey had a big weekend that weekend. They almost beat Tennessee, who at that point was playing like the 27 Yankees. And so the fact that they kept that game close and then beat the SEC teams, those two other games, was really impressive. But I think as you look at their road to get here, guys, you know, they went 3-0 at the Eugene Regional. And then the Chapel Hill Super Regional, you think after the first game, well, you know, they're done. But not really, because it seemed like, you know, maybe North Carolina went in those last two games a little overconfident. But what happened is what's kind of been the story of Arizona's season the last half of the year is the starting pitching kind of took over. Owen Krimkowski was really good in the Super Regional. He's been, honestly, very good for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And then I really like at the back end of their bullpen with guys like Tony Pluta and Casey Hentz. Those guys are both, you know, big-time arms. Pluta is kind of an interesting look. And frankly, just to kind of get to that, that's kind of my key pitcher in this field because I have a lot of faith in Owen Krimkowski and Smith Bailey in that rotation. But ultimately, when you get to Omaha, you got to be able to close games out in pressure-packed situations. And he's just one of those guys, man. When he goes out there, like he is locked in. He does not deviate from the norm very often, and he's very consistent. So I like Pluta there in the back end. And then, of course, positionally, you know, Mason White, just because of his offensive prowess, obviously defensively, as we saw last weekend, leaves a little bit to be desired at times up the middle, but still just a lead hitter. I want to say 19 home runs, 70 RBIs this year for the Wildcats. So he's my kind of key position player. And I will mention one more guy. Right on brand, I'm going to mention two people. I'm going to say Aaron Walton. You know, you look at his power numbers, his offensive numbers, but his defense last weekend at Chapel Hill was impressive. And so, you know, Aaron Walton to me is another big key as well. But then one of the last things, if Arizona is going to win this tournament, it all boils down to the starting pitching. Their starting pitching is the reason why they're in this position. We all know about their offense, but if they continue to pitch the way they're pitching, I mean, they've got a chance to make a run in this thing and win the national championship. There's no doubt.
Fun fact on Mason White, third-generation Arizona Wildcat. Being here means a lot to him. He was emotional in the postgame after they clinched the Super Regional against North Carolina. So kind of a cool deal there for Mason White. Let's move on to Coastal Carolina. Aaron, that's your assignment. What do you got on the Chanticleers?
Yeah, really one of the best teams in the country, full stop, before I go any farther. I mean, it's a you know, there's a reason that they've already won 50 games. They're the winners of 23 in a row heading into Omaha, which is insane.
That's good, I'm told.
Pretty good. A stretch that, of course, includes 3-0 run through the Conway Regional, where I was that first weekend of the postseason. And it was impressive because, you know, they They showed they can beat you with some offense, in one of those games against East Carolina, and then they come back and win 1-0 in the clincher, and that's really more who they are. It's an elite pitching and defense team, and they continue to do that, to pitch and defend at a very high level at Auburn, and swept those guys on the road. I mean, we think Coastal Carolina was probably underseeded at number 13.
Right.
Probably we had them at more like
we had
number
them
8 or 9.
at 8 at one point over the weekend.
Yeah.
We just didn't think the committee would give them a top 8.
Yeah.
8,
we had
9.
them at number 8 on Friday or Saturday morning.
It was
so
so they're really, they're really good.
Yeah.
They're really experienced. One key player for me, Joe, for them offensively is Colby Thorndike, because they need. This is a team that, again, it's not like your typical Coastal team. They don't have as much offensive firepower as we're used to seeing from Coastal. They need some guys to kind of step forward in big moments like Thorndike did in the regional. It's the guy who had, I think, 2 home runs all regular season, and then he had a 2-homer game against East Carolina, part of a 4-for-5 performance. They recruited him they recruited him to be a big power bat, like a centerpiece guy, and he's kind of shown that at times. He's had a solid year, but the power hadn't really been there. And since that game, he's only 1 for 12. And so I think that's a key piece. Left-handed bat, they need to get going here. On the mound, there's a lot of guys you could talk about. I mean, certainly Cameron Flukie and Morrison are the big 1-2 punch. The bullpen is loaded, but keep an eye on Riley Eichhoff. This guy who pitched that clincher against East Carolina 1-0 game. Sinker, slider, command guy, doesn't walk anybody, which I love in this ballpark. You can't be giving people free bases. How, and when are they going to use him? He hadn't pitched since the regional because he didn't have, they swept the super, and this format is so spread out. You wonder, are they going to sprinkle him in relief if they need to? Their bullpen formula is so good, they probably don't have to. But he, for me, is an X factor. And if called upon, that's a guy that I feel like you can really trust to give you a quality start.
If they win this thing, how do they do it?
I think they have to just, be who they are, which is a team that is an elite run prevention outfit, pitch and play defense as well as anybody in the country. They're number 2 in the nation in ERA, and they're way up there in fielding percentage as well. Take care of the ball, play their brand of baseball. It should be a great fit for this ballpark. And hey, they're probably not going to beat you with home runs at the Chuck box. That's not who they are, and they don't have to be because they've proven that their formula works and plays in different settings.
Bradley, on to you. We're talking about the night matchup on day 1. That's Louisville and Oregon State. You're going to handle Louisville, so let us know what you think about the Cardinals.
Yeah, Louisville picked the right time to play the baseball that Dan McDonnell wanted them to play all year. They had a good season, obviously, 15-15 in the ACC, but there were moments throughout the year where they were battling injuries, both on the pitching staff and in the lineup. They were down to, freshmen and redshirt freshmen behind the plate, had a lot of inconsistency, particularly on the road. They go to, Nashville. They draw the number 1 national seed, and they take care of business. They look incredible on the mound. They play crisp, clean defense. They have enough timely hitting, and, they kind of cruise through that. They took care of Wright State. Just a really, really good weekend, and it set up kind of a tricky – they got to play at home in Supers, which was obviously unexpected, but they draw Miami, who they haven't faced in the regular season. Really competitive game, competitive series that came down to one swing, really,
right.
Which kind of tees off, with Eddie King Jr. as the player to watch for Louisville. And I think what's really great about Eddie King Jr. is he was a really good second half player last year. Comes into this year, obviously returning for his senior year, didn't get drafted. Comes into his senior year and gets off to a really poor start. I think he's hitting something like 150, 180 through his first 13 games. He flips that switch. He's hit 400 in his 39 games since, and he's hit 545 in the postseason so far. So I think if they're going to have a good week here, it really starts with him providing some thump because they can score in a lot of different ways. That's the Louisville identity. Yeah. But Eddie King Jr. is a key piece in the middle of the lineup. And then when we talk about the pitching, it starts with Patrick Forbes. Obviously, that's a pitching matchup we're circling with Forbes and probably Dax Whitney. And Forbes at his best, which we've seen throughout the year and particularly lately, he's able to fill up the zone, limit the walks. If he's able to do that here, it's going to lead to a lot of success. We saw, with Florida State's pitchers, you can get some swing and miss from Oregon State's lineup. So that's going to be key for him. And that kind of leads into what they need to do to win it all is just follow that pattern. Timely hitting, good execution when they need to score runs, and then just keep leaning into that pitching staff that really struggled in the regular season as they dealt with injuries and shuffling. I think 5.8 ERA. But in the postseason, when it's mattered the most, they've been dynamite, and that's going to be key for them.
I think that's going to be a really exciting matchup against Oregon State, two teams that have kind of different styles, Joe. And I know this is one that you're pretty familiar with the Beavers. You saw them late in the year.
Yep.
What's your take on that team and how they match up there?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to hold a thought on Patrick Forbes because I'm going to skip to my pitcher to watch, and that's Dax Whitney. If that's going to be that matchup in Game 1 for Oregon State and Louisville, those are two guys that are similar in terms of they're throwing lightning bolts up there to the plate. Both guys also sometimes struggle with efficiency and getting deep into games. And it feels like, at the risk of being overly simplistic, the pitcher that's able to be most efficient and get into the game there, I think has the advantage in that situation. But Oregon State, they didn't take the easy route to get here to Omaha. Lost the opening game of their regional at home, fought all the way back through it to win their place in Supers, and then had a tough matchup with Florida State in Corvallis that came down to the final game, and they really made a statement with the way they won that final game against Florida State. My hitter to watch is Iva Arquette. At his height, 6'5", wearing orange and black, looks a little like Cal Ripken out there at the position at shortstop. The guy can really hit, though. Obviously, that's where his bread is buttered. He's turned himself into a good defensive shortstop, but the bat is what really carries for him. 18 home runs on the year, hitting .354 on the season. I mentioned Dax Whitney, just a freshman, by the way. Like, this guy's going to be really, really special. He's pretty special right now as it is, but I can only imagine how good he's going to be when it's all said and done. And then when we talk about how Oregon State could win this thing, to me, the biggest key is Kleinschmidt and Whitney in the rotation, keeping Oregon State on schedule. And by that, I mean, if you stay in the winner's bracket, you don't get overextended. You don't have to go to a third starter as often. You can kind of make it work with fewer pitchers. I think that's going to be key for this Oregon State team, as it is with most guys. The other thing is Trent Caraway has been hot of late. Oregon State fans maybe don't want me mentioning it because we might spook it and jinx it at this point, but he struggled so much throughout the season, just waiting for him to come online. Feels like he's getting there now. If he stays hot here, that makes Oregon State even more dangerous.
Yeah, over the weekend, he went from like 8th to like 5th to number 1 or number 2 in the lineup, right, in the Super Regional?
Yeah. And what
crazy.
was most impressive about him in the Supers, he did not have a good first 2 games against Florida State. I think he was 0 for 8 with a walk, and they bumped him up to the leadoff spot for that third game after he'd gone 0 for 8, and he goes 2 for 4, hits a grand slam. Yeah. And, it was funny to hear Mitch Canham talk about it, where it was like, that's the guy you want to lead you basically into the arena. Like, that's the one you want walking into the batter's box lead off. And so I thought it was kind of a crazy move when I saw the lineup come out, because he'd hit lead off at points in the year, but it had really fallen down. But it paid off, and he's swinging the bat well right now.
Yeah, really excited for that matchup Friday night. We're going to get to bracket 2 here in just a minute, but first we're going to take a 2-minute break. As the game show host Chuck Woolery would say, we're going to be back in 2 and 2 with a word from our partner.
Recently, your family was featured in ESPN's SEC Storied in Spirit, which focuses on the championship run for that 2010-2011 Gamecocks team. 2 young boys battling cancer. One of those was your son, Charlie. And they were kind of at the center of it all, and that was pretty magical. Can you kind of touch on that season, the journey for Charlie, and then the importance of the sport of baseball as a whole to your family?
These athletes are amazing people. They're genuine. They're good humans. They are caring. They're gentle and kind, and they gave us hope back then. They gave Charlie a reason to beat cancer. I mean, that wasn't the only reason, but it was a very powerful, fun reason. And he, in turn, taught them to never give up. And so I will say that the story is great. Despite who's in it, we are just honored to be a family that gets to say thank you on behalf of many families who don't, countless families don't get to say thank you. I will say that we're forever changed by it. I don't know any other way that my husband would say the same thing. We are forever changed by how they were able to put this story into perspective with our son Charlie and with Baylor from South Carolina, and what the Gamecocks did for them. Champions aren't, I think it's something at the end of the movie, champions are not just the ones that get the ring at the end of the series. It's the people who truly, truly change lives, and that team did it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. If you haven't been down to the baseball village, make sure that it's right across the street from the ballpark. Can't miss it. There's so much that's going on, and you truly can't get to all of it in one day, I don't think. Like section it off. Come every day. But also enjoy the College World Series. It truly is magical. Personally, for me, in the sports calendar year, it's my favorite because it is that community, and it's for the love of baseball, but it's also like those cherished memories and those new friendships that you're going to meet. You're going to meet, somebody new in the tailgate. You're going to meet somebody new down at Omaha Baseball Village. So enjoy it. It's only 2 weeks, but it rounds out the summer perfectly.
All right, well, real quick, thank you before we get to bracket 2 for our friends at Hurrdat Sports for helping us out here. You guys are watching us, can't see them, but I can see them right here, and I'm waving at them and saying thank you for helping us get on the air and helping us and supporting us while we're here in Omaha. Got a great setup here. You can kind of see the sights, and I guess you hear the sounds. You don't see the sounds, but we've got some BP going on behind us.
Squeeze plays Mike Rooney down there.
That's right. Celebrity sighting, Mike Rooney, Mike Farron.
Pat James.
Pat James.
By the way, the best hair in the building over Aaron's hair right here.
Tip of the cap to Pat.
Yeah.
It's certainly more voluminous. Better is a judgment I'm not willing to make necessarily, but it is more voluminous.
See, this is the guy who knows where his bread is buttered right here.
That's right.
I got to give Chris Gennaro some love as well. He's done an amazing job.
Yeah, shout out to Chris Gennaro. People
let's not forget about Chris.
Right.
Executive producer, is that what we're calling him?
Producer Chris Gennaro. Yeah, that's in his contract. Actually, we have to refer to him as executive producer.
Him and Bradley have competing mustaches over
There's
here.
That's true. That's it. Yeah,
a lot of swag going
on. All right, let's get to bracket 2. This is for me. No offense to bracket 1, which is also great. This one is the bracket that's more fun for me because we've got Murray State as a Cinderella here. We've also got the monster matchup between LSU and Arkansas Saturday night. There might be 5 or 10 people here to see that. 5 or 10 million, perhaps it's gonna feel like
half of Louisiana is on the way up here.
That's right.
Speak.
I guess real quick before we dive into the teams, let's just take a second. Like, let's talk about the first bracket in general, and then maybe the second bracket. Like, which of the two is it more intriguing, and is there a reason why you'd lean one way or the other? I like the second bracket. I'll just say while you guys think about it a little bit. Because I do like the variety of we've got the big brand names, we've got the star power, we're going to have that awesome atmosphere. But also you have a UCLA team that hasn't been here in a long time. Really happy for them. Yeah. And you've got a Murray State team that's never been here. And I think that variety is really cool. Kendall, what do you got?
Yeah, I like bracket 2. You mentioned UCLA. What's really interesting about those guys is they've had a business-like approach all year long, and they get Cody Del Vecchio back for this thing. I heard this morning, I was told this morning that he's back from just being out for academic reasons. So, he's a guy that was like their Friday starter earlier in the year. His numbers weren't great early in the year, but he's an older guy who can give them a lot of length if they need him. So UCLA is intriguing. And then Murray State, I will say this. They are a Cinderella, but, dude, that's a legit team. Yeah. To have Ole Miss down 12-3 in a regional championship game in Oxford, they dominated most of that game until the very end when Ole Miss made that run. They went to Duke, as Aaron saw last weekend, and looked the part. Offensively, they made big pitches against a really good Duke team. So, yeah, they're Cinderella, but, man, that's a club that, like, if they won a couple of games here, would I be surprised? Not at all. They remind me a lot of ORU a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think it's a good comp. Like, it wouldn't be surprised. Aaron, what do you got just in general in brackets?
Like both brackets. For all the reasons you talked about, I like that side. But also, bracket 1, I think it's neat because you've got a cool contrast in styles. You've got Louisville with the hyper-aggressive kind of speed game. They're the only real, running team here. I think that's fun. You've got Coastal with just the smothering, pitching and defense and just take, rock solid care of the ball. And then, you got Oregon State, kind of the more powerhouse offense there. And then Arizona, I think, with the elite bullpen and also the star power at the top of the lineup. But, the fact that we've got some of these teams that are, like you said, not quite old blood, but teams that were staples of this event during the previous decade back here, Louisville and Oregon State on that side. For the Beavers, this is the first time since 2018 when they won it all, right? First time under Mitch Canham. That's a neat story. And, of course, Savage and McDonald getting back here and Chip Hale for the first time getting back here at Arizona. So there's some cool storylines on both sides.
Bradley, what do you got?
Yeah, I also lean bracket 1 as well. I think you can just keep going with the narratives. Like you have the national title rematch with Coastal and Arizona. I think the Oregon State angle, it was really cool. I was in Corvallis for that super. You could see how much getting to Omaha meant for Mitch Canham. And he talked a lot about Casey and how much he just didn't want to let him down. And I thought it was really interesting to hear that and just talking about Omaha is where the Beavers belong was kind of the prevailing sentiment. So I think it's great to see them back. And I think it's really cool to see Louisville, who kind of ran into a lean run relatively where it was, okay, is the dynasty kind of over? Because, they were regulars. And it felt like, okay, maybe the rest of the ACC's kind of passed them a bit, but now they're back and they look great.
The other thing about Coastal I'd mention real quick is what a job that Kevin Schnall and the staff have done. When a legendary coach like Gary Gilmore steps down or retires, you never really know how things are going to go, right? You think Schnall's been there for a while. He's certainly a well-accomplished assistant, but you don't really know how he's going to do as a head coach, but he's done an incredible job. And kudos to his staff, too. Matt Williams with their pitching staff's done a phenomenal job. They're a really good team.
Yeah, no doubt.
To rank, I'm sorry, one more thing. To rank second in the country in ERA, playing your games in that launching pad is unbelievable.
conference.
It's on par with Wake Forest leading the country in ERA. At their ballpark. Like there's not places where you go and put up that kind of a gaudy, low number.
Yeah, such a good point. Let's dive into it. We're going to start with UCLA in bracket 2. Bradley, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, UCLA kind of coasted here in a sense. It really felt like they played a brand of baseball that was like, to use the suffocating example, they played really good defense. They got enough hits when they needed to, and they pitched extremely well. And so they kind of cruised through their home regional. Then they get UTSA, and UTSA has that quick 2-0 lead in the first game of the Super, and then they didn't score the rest of the way. It was just. And that's an offense they proved it in Texas. Like, they're difficult to put down, and UCLA kind of made quick work. The bullpen, I think, threw I forget how many innings, but they didn't allow a hit. It's like 1 walk, 1 hit by pitch from the relievers in that. So it was really dominant stuff from UCLA. And the star power on this team, starting obviously with Brock Chalowski, leads the nation in WAR by a healthy margin. He's the player to watch. I think what's interesting about him is he's having a fine postseason. I think he's hitting like 380. Doesn't have an extra base hit. And this is a guy in those 7 games. This is a guy who hit 23 home runs, most by a UCLA player, I think, since 2000. So I think it'll be really interesting to see. This is his big kind of moment. He kind of got snubbed for the Golden Spikes finalists. It was a really tough call there with those 3.
Mike Rooney was incensed about that.
Mike Rooney was not pleased.
I've never seen Mike Rooney more upset about something.
Yeah, so he put together a phenomenal season. I know this was like Omaha was on he had that checklist that's kind of gone around of his goals for the year. So it's cool to see him here, and I think it's a big opportunity for him to sort of show out.
I was going to say real quick, the other thing I really like about the guy is ESPN interviewed him the other day after they won, and what an incredible kid. There's some college baseball players they interview after games, and you're like, that's just a college kid. No, that dude sounded like a big leaguer. Right. Like his answers, the thoughtfulness, the in-depth nature of his answers, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I spent some time with him out there when I was covered a random Sunday game late in the season. And what a treat. The guy who he reminds me of, just his presence, is Dansby Swanson.
That's a great comp.
It's the charisma, the easy, natural likability and insightfulness, and just, I don't know, the whole thing. That's the kind of comp. Top of the draft, shortstop for a team that won it all, for Vanderbilt. That's kind of who he is. He's the guy.
Yeah, that's such a great comp. But I hadn't really thought through that. What do you got on the mound?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how they use Ian May. So they have, obviously, with Del Vecchio back, that's another one to watch. But they've got, Michael Barnett, Landon Stump, kind of the two starters. Yeah. And Ian May has been, throughout the year, he was sort of one of their only transfers from Cal, and it was kind of what role is he going to play. And it's been everything from a Friday starter to a Saturday starter to out of the bullpen. They used him as a sort of piggyback behind Stump in the regionals. And so I'm interested to see what he can do for them, because I do think with the way the bullpen is, it pitched great, but it's a light staff in terms of numbers that it feels like Savage trusts. So I think May's a guy that can give them bulk, and it'll be interesting to see what they get out of him and where they use him this weekend.
Yeah, happy for Ian May, too. I mean, it's a guy that has dealt with injuries, and felt like at Cal he would show these flashes of greatness, and we'd get really excited, and then the injury bug bit, and never felt like he totally reached his potential, but he's done a lot of good stuff with UCLA this season.
This is a neat pitching staff for a John Savage team, because if you think back to last time they were here in 2013, it was set up so differently. It was your 3 workhorse guys, Plucko and Vandertag, and they're going to give you 6-7 innings, and then we got our 7th inning guy, our 8th inning guy, 9th, and it was so structured like a traditional John Savage staff.
Felt like a big league team.
It felt like a big league staff, exactly. And this is just like, we're going to mix and match. And I think it's a masterful job by John Savage managing this staff, just running different guys in there, different looks. I mean, they have some power stuff, but it's not necessarily like guys that are just going to overwhelm you with stuff. The pieces just fit together, and he's I think just managed it really well.
Yeah.
If they're going to win this thing, what do you feel like the path is?
Yeah, I mean, I think starts with the pitching. They're able to mix and match, like Aaron said there, and get enough from those starters to where, you're not dealing with a ton of innings, because I do think covering a large bulk, like you got to get enough out of Barnett and Stump and wherever you use Del Vecchio and May. But if they pitch the way they've been pitching, they play great defense, and they've been able to get the hits they need. I think it's kind of similar to Louisville, where they can execute at a high enough level where they're not going to beat themselves. And if you don't beat yourself, you're in good shape there.
Last time UCLA was here, they won the thing. So they at least have that history, I guess, on their side. Let's move on to Murray State. I'm excited to hear what Aaron has to say about Murray State. For those watching that are looking for kind of just that, underdog team to get behind for the week. I know there's going to be a lot of locals here in Omaha that are going to take up the Murray State cause. But tell us a little bit about the Racers, because Kendall brought up a good point in that, yes, this is a cool story that Murray State's here, but take them lightly at your own peril. This is not an easy task for anybody.
For sure. And they showed that. I mean, really, most of the season, they had kind of established themselves as kind of one of the top teams in the Valley. And our guy, Patrick Ebert, was on this early. I think he wrote about them midway through the season, had a great in-depth profile on them. And so heading into the regional, we thought they were a dangerous 4 seed. But I want to just reiterate that this is not quite the same as the previous 3-4 seeds that got here, because like Fresno State in 2008, they were a preseason top 25 team. Stony Brook was a team that the previous summer had tons of guys all over the Cape. A lot of us were on that team, and they had more guys drafted than LSU when they went to that super regional and beat them. They were loaded. And then, of course, you had Oral Roberts. This is a program that's been in a ton of regionals, has had won a regional. This program, Murray State, only been to 3 regionals in its history. The last one was 2003. They hadn't won a game in the postseason since 1978. And last year was supposed to be the year that they made this run. Right. They had all those seniors. They lost 22 seniors off last year's team, and they were terrible in the fall. All those guys will tell you, the players that were back were like, man, we were a disgrace.
They were very honest about that.
Yeah, we got our butts kicked.
They were so bad they lost their inner squad.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough scene, and they were they weren't really expecting this to be a great team. They had all these newcomers, 27 newcomers, something like that, that they had to try to blend in there with a new coaching staff. And so nobody really saw this coming. They were picked to finish 4th or 5th in the Valley in the preseason, and there was no reason to think that this team was going to be an Omaha team. Yeah. So it is a very surprising story. If you look back a year ago, to the fact that they're here, is wild. That said, they looked the part on the way here. Certainly. I mean, going to Oxford, scoring a bunch of runs, and just out offensing Ole Miss in their own park was impressive. But then to go to Duke, and some different style of games. You did have one 19-9 game in there when the wind was blowing out. Yeah. And the next day, it's a tight, tense, low-scoring game. It's a night game, and they adjusted to that, even without their top 2 starters on the mound. And they were able to find a way to win that game. It was 5-4 or something.
5-4,
right?
yeah.
I mean, so they showed you that they can beat you different ways, but that to me was very loud.
And they don't fold. That's the thing. I mean, they went to Oxford in front of 12,000 people. Duke is a different deal, obviously not as many people, but that's a road environment frankly, it's a lot more people than are at Murray State games during the regular season still. And they didn't get sped up. They didn't look out of place. There was no part of them that didn't look like they were.
You really thought in that Ole Miss game, that the regional championship, when Ole Miss made it 12-11, when they were up 12-3, you were like, man, Ole Miss is going to win this in sort of dramatic fashion. Like the last couple innings were actually pretty calm. Yeah.
They just kind of, exactly, dusted themselves off and got back up there.
They calibrated.
The perfect example of that is when they thought they had the thing won, against Duke. Right. They're dogpiling. You see, I took a photo of, you can see Carson Garner in the background, and he's face down in the turf, just overcome by emotion. And then the call gets overturned. You got to go back out there and get another out. No problem. I mean, they just get out there and do it. It was pretty impressive. I'll move on to my player to watch here for Murray State. And that's Dusty Mercer. This guy's been red hot. He's one of the returning guys for them. He didn't start his career there, but he's been there for a few years at Murray State. Started his career at Virginia Tech.
Correct.
But he's become a key guy for several years, a guy that they can count on. But he's red hot right now. 16 for 32. He's hitting 500 in the NCAA tournament. He had 7 doubles in the regional, which, again, doubles win here. We've always talked about that. For sure. We've always talked 100%. About that, and that's a key theme here. This team hits a lot of them. They, in fact, lead the field of the Omaha field in doubles per game. I think it's like top 5 in the country.
Interesting.
Pitcher to watch here is Graham Kellum. Joe, this guy has 4 saves and a win in the NCAA tournament. He's been the guy. If you think back to when the calendar switched over to April,
not that long ago,
he had a 12+ ERA.
Yeah.
And it was like still 6+ we had into the NCAA tournament. And then he just found it. Yeah. And they've been riding him. And you got to have that guy that you can trust at the back end. Like, it gives you so much peace of mind. He's got probably the best stuff on the team. He's probably the best pitching prospect on the team, certainly. It's, 92, 94. with a big, slow yacker of a curveball, but he's also got a little kind of slider thing, occasionally change up. But I mean, it's fastball, curveball, and guts. It's the composure. So impressive to me last weekend. So key guy to watch for them. For Murray State to win this thing, I think first of all it's execute their style, which is there are a lot of tough outs and it's a lot of doubles. Like I think back to the 2016 Arizona team that was here that played for national title, and Jay Johnson always described their offensive philosophy as it's a ball or it's a double.
Yeah.
And like that's what this team feels like to me. It's either a take or like they're banging that thing into the gap or off the wall. And it's just they do such a great job of punishing mistakes. That's one thing that they talk a lot about is hey, we can spoil a pitcher strike, we can take a pitcher strike, whatever. But when that guy misses over the middle, we're on it. Yeah. And they did that over and over again against Duke. Up and down their lineup, they have a lot of guys. I think they have 5 regulars that have at least as many walks as strikeouts, and a ton of doubles all over the place. So if they play their style, I think that gives them a chance to do a lot of damage here. And then it's just a matter of getting enough on the mound, and that means Nick Shetty and Isaac Silver, their 1-2 punch. Those guys have to perform, but it starts with just executing their own identity, their own offense.
Yeah. The key, I hate to phrase it this way, but the key for them, I think, is early in this thing. If they're going to win some games, they're going to have to win without Kellum in a game. I mean, you might be able to pitch him every day, but it does feel like if you can get a lead to the point where you don't feel you'd have to go to him, I think that's huge for them. Whether or not they can do it or they're willing to, I think, is another question. But given that he's their best bullet to fire late in games, you'd like to maybe hold off on him.
But it's so spread out here. You're playing every other day.
It's fair.
Especially if you can stay in the winner's bracket. I mean, I think you could absolutely see him. If they were to win it all, he could pitch, in all 5 games if they go 5-0 through this thing.
He could pull a Matt Troop.
Yep.
That's right. Let's move on to LSU. That's going to be Kendall. Tell us a little bit about the Tigers.
Yeah, I've watched LSU a lot this year. This has been an interesting team in the sense that LSU has had points this year where the pitching's been really good and the offense has been a little bit down. The offense has been really good and the pitching's been a little bit down. So it's been a little bit of a seesaw with the Tigers. But in the road to get here, they went 3-1 the Baton Rouge Regional. They kind of made a story out of Little Rock by Little Rock knocking them off once. Yep. And let's not forget, guys, they're battle tested. This is a team that was it the 7th inning against Little Rock? It was tied.
Yeah.
And obviously they ran away at the end. But, this is a team that needed Case and Evans to give them serious length in the regional just to get to a super. I thought once they got past the regional, you kind of sensed the LSU was kind of like, ooh, now we're okay. And I thought last weekend against West Virginia, they just kind of overwhelmed the Mountaineers in the later innings. But this is a club that, as they get here, you look at Cade Anderson, the job that he's done this year with 10 wins. He's been awesome. He's going to pound the strike zone. It's elite stuff. Nate Yeske, I was talking to him a while back about Anderson, and he kind of comped him to Max Fried, which I thought was interesting. I watched on Synergy, went back and watched a little bit of Fried's starts at the Yankees. I see it a lot. But, he's obviously had a great year for them. And then, Jared Jones offensively, he's a big key here because I know we talk about, not wanting to rely too much on the home run here. But he is one of those guys that he does have the power that if he runs into a ball, even in this ballpark, it is getting out of here. And, Jared has been one of those guys this year, guys, that has been up and down. I mean, there's been games where he's going 0 for 4 or 4 strikeouts. I want to say the Tennessee series I was at, he hit that walk-off home run that everybody remembers that went out, went about 900 feet. But he did nothing the rest of the weekend. Like it was strikeout after strikeout. So Jared Jones is a big key here because, again, if he gets in a groove and gets that power rolling, he's going to explode. Quick
interjection here because I think I'm guilty of talking a lot about how, you don't win here with home runs. You win here with doubles and whatever. It's easy to get stuck in the time warp and think about 2013 or however this park used to play. It is a different era. Okay, like the last year, the last 2 years, we've had more home runs here, 30 plus, more than a home run per team per game, which is a huge jump from the way this park used to play. And the teams that won it all, Tennessee was a home run hitting team, right? Year before that, LSU and Florida were home run hitting teams, and they came here and still hit some home runs. So that can still be a part of the game plan.
Sure.
That said, home runs are down a little bit this year from where they've been. The wind here, the prevailing wind is in. It's still not a home run hitter's park. And so just something to keep in mind is the impact of the long ball on this College World Series.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And one thing I will say about LSU's offense, and I was talking to the SEC coach about this a few weeks ago, is that they will grind out at bats. It might not be the typical LSU lineup that, top to bottom is just like star power after star power outside of Curiel, maybe Jared Jones. But even, guys like Josh Pearson, they're going to work a lot of counts. And, your pitcher's going to look up, and I guess this will likely be your approach against Zach Root. You're going to look up, and Zach Root's going to be at 75 pitches through 5 innings. That's just kind of the way LSU rolls. But for me, I guess just looking at this team and how they win this College World Series, their offense in the postseason averaging 10 runs a game. Obviously, they're not going to average 10 runs a game here. If they average 10 runs a game here, they're going to win the national championship. But if you get even half of that kind of production here, or a little bit over per game, that bodes well. And so if LSU's offense is dialed in, I love the way that Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson match up here. Ianson has been awesome the second half of the season. He was really good earlier in the season, but he's even been better the second half of the season. And the other thing I like about LSU, too, is what's been kind of their bugaboo this year, guys, at times, has been the number 3 spot in the rotation.
Right.
And guess what happens in Omaha? You don't necessarily have to have that guy right off the bat. I mean, you can go Anderson, day off, Ianson, day off. If you win that second game, you don't need Cade Anderson for 2 more days. So, it's just one of the situations where I actually think their pitching staff matches up well here. So, Casey Evans will be a guy to watch. I would imagine that tomorrow or Saturday, if Anderson gives them 6 or 7, I would imagine Evans is closing that out for him, given how nasty his stuff was the last couple of weekends. But to me, that's the key for LSU.
I think this, there's going to be a lot of attention paid on this game, understandably so. It's going to be the game that brings the Omaha atmosphere that we're all looking for. It's nice to, don't get me wrong, I love having the variety here in the field, but there's always something special about games here in Omaha where the place is sold out and there's 2 big fan bases here. So I do like the variety, but it is a little like a warm blanket to have LSU and Arkansas playing each other.
I will say this: I was talking to Jay Johnson the other day, and he was telling me that he's like, obviously, I have a lot of respect for these other teams in this field, but like in terms of the approach in this tournament, it's almost like I tell our guys, like, hey, there's a potential that we're essentially going to play Arkansas in a 3-game series.
Right.
Like it's like we played them in Baton Rouge a few weeks ago. We might have to play another 3-game series against them in Omaha. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. This is the showcase showdown. Joe, take us to the Hogs, because this, again, I've said all year long, I thought these were the 2 best teams in the country, and now they get to play each other. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah,
it really should be. And it's such a good point. Like, they're going to have to – it almost feels like, if I'm one of these 2 coaches, when the bracket played out like it is, they kind of rolled their eyes at the idea of, like, we've got all these upsets in the postseason, and our first game is against another team that could win the national title. Like, that's – that's a tough draw, but that's what it is. It's part of the reason why we love this event, is that you just don't know. And Arkansas has played well this postseason. They've, in a year when no one has been that consistent, even in the SEC, they've been the most consistent, arguably, right? Where they've had some bumps, but every SEC team had a weekend or 2 like that. But their best has been better than anyone else's best when they've been at their best. They go 3-0 in their regional. Didn't really break too much of a sweat in that one. Wins over North Dakota State and Creighton, and then swept the Fayetteville Super Regional against Tennessee. And I think it's not just that they swept it; it's that in the second game it wasn't competitive. I mean, they just boat raced.
Yeah, they had Liam Doyle out of the game. The 5th inning?
Yeah,
into the 4th inning.
Yeah, not even completed 5. So, like, they're playing really, really well right now. And yes, okay, this was not a vintage Tennessee team, but if you can do that to Tennessee in a Super Regional, you can win this thing and don't really necessarily have to do anything special or out of the ordinary. On the field, Vahiva Aloy is a guy to watch. I mean, that's a famous name. He's a Golden Spikes finalist, but he's a guy, like when I talked about Iva Arquette earlier, first of all, 2 Hawaiians. How about that? But a guy who was a bat first infielder in his career, Sacramento State, his first year last year at Arkansas, was a guy with, he was bat first, so that there were questions about his defense initially. A decent bit of swing and miss, but he showed that power. This year, he's kind of rounded into form. He's a very dependable shortstop. He's not swinging and missing as much. There's still a little bit in there, but the power has gone to a whole nother level. So it's been a really special season for him, and it feels like, as dangerous as the Arkansas lineup is, and this is probably 1 through 9 the most dangerous lineup for my money here in this field. When he's going, they go. Like, he tends to be the guy that leads the way. When he's hot, it's really, really hard to shut them down. On the mound, Gabe Gackle is, for me, the guy. It's a little bit like we talked about, like an Ian May or Del Vecchio. Like, how do they fold those pitchers in? I think it's the same thing with Gackle, where We know this stuff is electric. They tried to start him. It went okay. Like, it wasn't a disaster with him as a starter, but it just wasn't what he was as a reliever last year. So they move him back into the bullpen, and really ever since then, he's been awesome. He's been back to the Gabe Gackle we saw last year, and he's honestly throwing as many pitches as he did as a starter. It just so happens that he's doing it as a piggyback guy. And I just wonder kind of, will they take a wait and see approach? You know, if Root gets through 7, right? Do you say, okay, let's try to finish this with somebody else so we can use Gackle in a situation where we need 4 or 5 innings, right? That's going to be a question for me because he is a very important.
I think with a day off, you got to go to your guy. I mean, if you have a chance to beat LSU, you've got to throw Gackle.
Yeah,
No question.
That's fair. And then comparing offenses to LSU, I think that's an interesting thing. I mean, because LSU ranks pretty high in a lot of offensive metrics, but I think when you put those two lineups together, maybe there's some dissenting opinions here, but like I just think Arkansas is the more scary of the two lineups.
I agree.
Well, Bradley's got the numbers right there in front of him. I mean, Arkansas's way up at the top and across the board in almost every category, offense, defense, and pitching. I mean, it's really, they do feel like the most complete team. But what impresses you about that?
I mean, when you talk about the lineup and you look at, splits like versus righties versus lefties, that's like one of the main areas where when you look at the teams in this field, you see separation. Like Arkansas crushes lefties, and they're very good against righties too. So it's a very balanced lineup. And then, you look at pretty much any metric, and it's like, oh, they're top 10, they're top 5, they're top 15. They just do a lot of things right offensively. They have a lot of thump. They have a lot of, I think in the postseason they've drawn 29 walks, struck out 32 times. Like they're disciplined, they're good hitters, and it's a scary lineup, especially when you pair it with the rest of that roster.
And I think that their ability to defend at an elite level also really stands out. And I think part of that, I think huge keys for Arkansas this year. You mentioned Aloy and his improvement defensively as a shortstop, way better than I thought he was going to be defensively. But,
agreed.
But also Helfrich behind the plate, blue chip guy, Ryder Helfrich. They were very excited about him coming in as a freshman. Didn't really get, didn't have an everyday spot. I mean, they had Hudson White, they had, older guys in front of him. But he stayed the course. He stayed in Arkansas, and he's now become the guy. And he's so good at framing and stealing those strikes. Underrated part of I think, what makes that pitching staff good and what makes that defense good.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Helfrich that's impressive to me is I kind of thought, I'll admit, like if he ends up meeting his potential or being close to it, it's going to be because he just rakes offensively. And the defense will be passable, right? Enough to play him back there every day, but his bat is what's going to carry him. I mean, he's had a nice year offensively, but he has turned into a well-rounded player for them. So, good player development story for a program that just seems like they have a lot of those every year.
Yeah.
In terms of how Arkansas wins this thing, I mean, this is going to be simple, but obviously that first game is so important. If you're going to win the College World Series, you kind of got to win that first game. Now, obviously that's not totally true, but it just makes your life so much easier. And that means they're going to have to beat Kate Anderson. And that's tough. I like Arkansas to win the national title, but in saying that, I'm kind of also saying that I think they're going to beat Kate Anderson, and I'm not sure I feel as strongly about that.
You might have to beat him twice.
Right. So, like, when I think about it that way, I'm not nearly as sure as I thought I would be going into it. But Zach Root, obviously, is right there. If he pitches like he did in the Super Regional, I think he's just as good. And I think he's a good match for what they're going to try to do here, which is, LSU likes to bail itself out with the home run sometimes. Well, he's a sinker ball guy. Like, he's a guy that's going to try to get ground balls. And if he can keep the ball on the ground, I think they're in good shape. I say all that to say, if Arkansas is going to win this thing, it's just be the best version of yourself. It's as simple as that. I think if Arkansas plays at its peak potential or something close to it, I think they win the national title here. I think they're the best team here.
Bradley, do you have the splits on how LSU does against lefties?
Yeah, so they're 17th against righties in weighted runs created plus, 73rd against lefties.
So that's something to watch. A little bit more vulnerable against lefties. Root's a really good lefty. You mentioned he's got the sinker, but it's power, it's a power sinker,
right?
It's
heavy.
It's heavy and with some velocity to it, but also he can spin a couple different breaking balls. He's got the splitter. I mean, it's a lot going on with Zach Root. And of course, Anderson's got 4 pitches too. That matchup is electric.
Yeah, we might be out of here in 1:45 on that one, just like if they both
I'm going to hold you to that.
Really, really well. Yeah, that you did not hear that from me. We've got one more segment we're going to get to get you guys out of here. But first, a quick word from our partner.
Obviously, the camaraderie and the competition is super important, but I think that the element of giving back to the community is also important to a lot of the fans that come through here in one way, shape, or another. So how important is that, just the community element surrounding the whole entire shot challenge?
Regardless of how you finish, buy a shot, your school is going to get $1 towards their food bank. And then we also donate 50 cents for every shot sold locally. So, 2 years ago, we wrote a $47,000 check to the food bank of the Heartland. And last year, we split it up between Creighton, UNO, and Iowa Western. They each got a little over $16,000 each for their food banks. So it's nice to kick back locally as well. A lot of local people jump in just like the schools do. So an opportunity to cover that broad of a spectrum and to raise that amount of money in such a short time and to give back, to food insecurities is something that I know we're real proud of, and we just want to try to push it as far as we can.
You again for that message. Rocco's. Don't forget the Jello Shot Challenge. That is a cool subplot of the College World Series every year. I was actually going to jokingly suggest that after this is over, we go over there and maybe get some, because we have work to do today, non-alcoholic Jello shots. Then I realized that's just Jello. So we could probably just go buy Jello and just do that instead. But regardless, I don't think I have to tell anybody watching this, if you're coming to Omaha, that's obviously a cool little sideshow there. And doing a lot of, it started off as just kind of a fun thing they did at their bar and has turned into a genuine philanthropic endeavor and doing a lot of cool things both here locally and in the local communities of the schools that are here. So it's a cool deal all over. Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about our picks. They're going to put our feet to the fire now. This is the part that we all hate because this is inevitably going to be held against us. We're going to start with Kendall. Kendall, give us your 2 bracket winners and then who you've got winning it all.
All right. I wish that Oregon State fan was still around because I'm taking Oregon State to win the first bracket. I just really like their look. I mean, Segura, Dax Whitney, Klein Schmidt. I like the way their offense has played over the last couple of weeks, so I like Oregon State in bracket 1. I'll go with LSU in bracket 2. I already felt LSU, but now that we just mentioned that they would have to beat Kate Anderson twice, I feel even better about my LSU pick. So I'm going to go with LSU, and I'm going to go with LSU winning the national championship. Of course, the last time these two teams played in Omaha, Oregon State, was it Oregon State eliminate them?
It was 17. Wasn't 17? I know they played during like that. They had a little history here in Omaha.
Yeah, there's a lot of history.
Well done.
They all kind of run together.
They do.
There's a lot of history between
Nice.
these 2 programs, but I have Oregon State and LSU playing for the national championship and the Tigers winning the crown.
All right, Aaron.
Welcome to the LSU bandwagon. First of all,
Thank you.
I've been driving that bandwagon.
You have since Frisco.
Yeah,
You really have.
Yeah, so thank you.
Well, that's a good thing, too, because nobody would have talked about LSU.
I know. It's a plucky little upstart. Maybe they're in this little place called Baton Rouge.
I think Fit made the best comment yesterday in our chat. We were talking about, picking LSU and like LSU fans being happy. It's like, no, they'd be mad at, like, they just expect you to pick them.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
They're not even going to notice.
That's the default answer. Yeah.
But that said, I think I'm supposed to give my other bracket pick first. I'm taking Coastal Carolina in bracket 1. I had a really hard time in bracket 1.
Same.
I think any one of those teams could win it. I certainly think the Beavers feel like maybe the favorite. If you had to pick a favorite, I don't know. I think Arizona with their bullpen. I love a team that has a good bullpen, and they have a great bullpen. They kind of feel like a team that's flying under the radar that I don't think people are going to be talking that much about that could come out here. And
I agree.
It feels like every time Arizona gets here, they tend to make the most of that opportunity.
They do something,
and I know it's different coaching staffs each time, so I don't know how much that matters, but it just feels like it could be another Arizona year. All that said, this Coastal team to me, they just check the boxes I'm looking for. I want a team that's not going to beat itself, that's going to pound the zone, that can pitch and defend at a high level, enough offense. They believe in themselves, and 23 in a row is loud.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I was going to say about Coastal, what's really interesting is the Sirius Radio was asking me a question this morning about them having a chip on their shoulder. I don't feel like Coastal looks like they have a chip on their shoulder. I think they know they're really good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they feel like they have something to prove. They know they're an elite team.
And they have an elite catcher in Caden Bodine. Love that. Might be the best catcher in the whole country. Leading your show back there. That's important.
Yeah.
Coastal Carolina versus LSU, a rematch of the 2016 Baton Rouge Super Regional. That's my matchup here.
I was at
that Super Regional. And it was a lot of fun.
One of the great ones.
Yeah,
PTSD in Baton Rouge
for sure. So I think that would be a nice opportunity for LSU to get a little bit of vengeance. I'll tell you what. Again, I feel like a lot of different teams could win this thing, which I think is fun. But I'm going to stick with the LSU team. I've been picking them mostly to win it all for a while. I had a little detour with Arkansas here and there.
Dalliance, if you will.
Dalliance. I love their team. But I just think that Anderson Ianson, it's just like that is such a tough formula to crack. Yeah. And I think their offense is better. I've been saying it all year long. I just think it's better than people give credit for. I get that at times it could be a little frustrating, but you look up at the end of the day and they're like 4th in the SEC in scoring or something. They do across the board pretty good statistically, and you have to have some consistency in order to look up at the end of the year and you rank there, in all those different categories. So I think there's a little bit more length than you think. There's a little bit more star power than you think, and I just think there's some winning players like my guy Monster Milam at short, a spot where you want to be strong. Yeah,
they're a little bit similar to Coastal in that way, where I think we've done a lot of focusing on Coastal about how they're not as physical as they usually are. This is usually an offense first team, and that's true. But then you look at the stats, and they still led the Sun Belt in most offensive stats, and you can say, okay, it's the Sun Belt, but you've also got Troy there. You've also got Southern Miss in that league, so it's still a good league. So their offense, maybe not much firepower, but still a very effective offense. Bradley, what do you got?
I mean, just piggybacking off that with Coastal, over that 23-game win streak, it's a 911 OPS as a team. They're stumped. It's a home run per game, and they swiped 47 stolen bases in that stretch. That's a good offense. So I feel like it's easy to look at the pitching and see, 2.49 ERA in that winning streak. So it's easy to look at those numbers and be like, okay, this is a team defined by pitching. But I do think that offense gets a little discredited at times. That being said, I'm not picking them. I kind of went back and forth on who I wanted out of this region. I do really like Arizona as well. I'm going with Oregon State, perhaps because I was just at Oregon State and I saw them in person, and so they're really fresh in my mind. But, I mean, it's power arms. They have so many guys they can go to out of that bullpen. And, again, we talk about 1-2 punches. Whitney, if he can keep his pitch count and go deep in games, Whitney Kleinschmidt, I put him up against a lot. Kleinschmidt looked unbelievable. I think 11 strikeouts, just carving.
Just that lineup.
Yeah, and then the guys they bring out of the pen, like they're different arm angles, they're funky.
A lot of different looks.
Yeah, a lot of different looks and a lot of different velo. Like, you have Kmatz coming out throwing 97. Like it's a good group, and I really like the lineup as well. So I have Oregon State, and then Arkansas is the most complete team in the field to me. We just talked about where they rank and everything, and I think at their best, it is the best team in the country in my opinion. Just because you have the starters, you have the bullpen arms, you have the power in the lineup, you have the defense, you're across the board in everything. Some of these other teams are up there with them, but not at that consistent level. So I'm going to Arkansas over Oregon State in that final, kind of shake off some demons there for the Razorbacks.
Yeah, I have Arkansas in that bracket. I think the way I've talked about them, I think everybody can infer that a little bit. In the other bracket, I do have Coastal Carolina. I just really like their pitching. I don't think people understand the degree to which high-level SEC teams would trade their rotation straight up for Coastals. And, that's not hyperbole. Morrison and Flukie are future pros. Riley Eichhoff is just your classic fifth-year senior college pitcher. He's just going to pound the strike zone at 91 miles an hour, and it's going to work, and you're not entirely sure how it's working.
A lot of sink. Good little slider, and it's just advanced field of pitch.
Yeah.
Pounds the zone.
Yeah, he's just going to be relentless with that. And in this ballpark, that tends to win. Like your point earlier, errors and free passes tend to be what hurts you here. Oftentimes you don't just get blitzed by an offense. It tends to be, do you give them something? And I think Coastal's just not going to give teams things. I will also say, I talked to a scout at the Sun Belt tournament who said Coastal was the most buttoned up team he had seen all season in terms of every dirt ball read they're right on. They go first to third on every single. They go second to home on every single. Every deep fly ball they're tagging. They make every routine play. So they're not going to give you anything in any sense of that phrase.
It's a great point. And Kevin Schnall made the comment during the regional, there's no team in the country that works more on base running than us. There might be some teams that work as much, but nobody works more on it. And it was really evident, the extra base, they were so good at that stuff. Louisville is another team that their identity is so tied up in their base running. So I just think that's interesting that you have two teams on that side that take such pride in that.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I have Arkansas winning it all against Coastal Carolina in the final. Again, I just think it's too complete a team. They can win too many different ways. They can shut you out. They can score 15 runs. They can grind out a 10-8 win. They can just do it all in terms of the way they can win games. So I like that versatility in winning the national title here. Last thing from you guys. Some parting thoughts. Take this anywhere you'd like. This is explore the space a little bit. Kendall, your parting thoughts here on the field, being here, College World Series, all of it.
Yeah, number one, very glad to be here with you guys. It's first year for Bradley. He's in the zone here, so welcome, Bradley.
The most prepared of all of us.
He really is. He's the most prepared. It's his first year. How about that? I think for me, I think as you look at this College World Series field, I would say if you looked at a postseason field and you saw a lot of surprising results, a lot of upsets, you would think that maybe there's one team in each bracket here that you're like, oh, there's without a doubt they're going to win that bracket, because there's a lot of upsets. typically there's some teams in there who maybe you wouldn't expect to be in Omaha. But I think when you look at both these brackets, especially the bracket one, I mean, just as we talked about, like any of those teams could conceivably win this tournament or win that bracket. I mean, you look at Louisville. If Patrick Forbes and their arms, step up and pitch well with their offense, they can make a run here. Oregon State, Coastal Carolina. I mean, it seems like it's been an hour since we talked about Arizona, but I mean, they've been a well-oiled machine over the last few weeks. So I like that about bracket one. I think bracket two, I love the fact that, you have Murray State here, and I love the fact that, Saturday night is going to feel like the national championship game. Whether that ends up proving to be the case down the road, we'll find out. But the crowd here, I would imagine, I mean, LSU will probably have a few more, but I would imagine the crowd's going to be almost split between Arkansas and LSU. It is going to feel like a winner-take-all type of game. And so I can't wait for that. But overall, man, just excited to be back in Omaha. And, we'll see what happens.
Aaron, what do you got?
I think it's just a fun field because it just felt like, especially after last year, it was just trending so much toward ACC, SEC. We had 4 ACC, of course, and 4 SEC last year. Yeah. And it felt like with the portal and NIL, things are only getting more and more, slanted in that direction. Yeah. And hey, those are the places where the most money is invested in baseball. And I get that causes a lot of resentment from the anti-SEC crowd. They say, it's just all about money. Just like people resent the Yankees and the Dodgers. Like they spend the most. That's why they're usually pretty good.
Yeah, right.
And so that said, it's nice that we have some SEC heavyweights here. I think that's important. We have the one at ACC team as well in Louisville, not the one that necessarily we were expecting to get here. But, I felt like all year long that all the top teams in the ACC had a little bit of question mark, a flaw here or there. I wasn't shocked to see them some of them just getting bumped off in the super regionals. And I felt like this year had a chance to give us a little bit more variety, but I didn't necessarily expect this. 3 teams from the former Pac-12, an independent, a Big 12 team and a Big 10 team now. That's cool, I think, to have the West reemerge back here in Omaha after last year, all ACC, SEC. Of course, the Murray State story, is the 4 seed out of the Missouri Valley Conference. And then Coastal, the Sun Belt team, getting back here. It's nice to have a different flavor this year, and it kind of maybe gives other programs hope that, hey, it's not just the SEC's world in college baseball. The SEC's always going to be just a Goliath that you're going to have to wrestle. They're not going away, but you can still get here, and you can still make a run at a national title as a member of the Missouri Valley Conference or the Sun Belt or wherever the former Pac-12 teams wound up. There's still room for you here, and I think that's fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. Dan Skirka said that in his post-game press conference in Durham, that somebody asked him what it means to be kind of the representative of the mid-majors, if to use that term that some like and some don't. And he said, I hope it gives everybody some hope that you can do this. And no disrespect to Murray State, but if Murray State can do it, just about anybody could do it if they put the team together, right, and have everything in place like Murray State does. It's not magic, but they have a team that could get it done, and they did. Bradley, what are your parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of building off what you're talking about, I just wrote a piece. I encourage you all to check it out on D1 Baseball about how these teams were built, and where players are from. And I think what's so fascinating about this field is we talk about the variety, we talk about the different play styles, but also just how these rosters are composed. Like you have team like UCLA, 1 or 2 transfers, a bunch of guys that took lumps as freshmen are now sophomores and are leading the charge. You have Murray State, which is built out of everywhere, really, like junior college, 4-year transfers, guys that redshirted, guys that were hurt. Like you just see all the different paths. You have heavy 4-year transfer schools. You have a good blend of both. You have junior college heavy. You just have all these different teams, and I think it's really cool to look at these rosters, look at these teams, and prepare for a College World Series where we have a lot of variety. We have a lot of conferences. We have a lot of players that have, up and downs, complicated paths, but they're all getting a chance to play here for a national championship, which I think is just really cool. And I'm excited to be here for it for the first time.
Yeah, I'll explore the space a little bit with mine since you guys covered a lot of ground there. Like when I come here every year, I just kind of get, at the risk of being a little bit sincere, like I get overwhelmed with gratitude for being able to be here every year and being able to be here from start to finish. Growing up as someone who loved college baseball with like every fiber of my being, the idea that I get to do this is just 10-year-old me would have not believed that I could be here. So I think it's really cool. And I bring that up because everyone watching this, like you guys are the reason we get to do this.
Yep.
If you're watching this, if you subscribe to D1 Baseball, which you should if you are not, you guys are why we get to do this, and we're extremely grateful about that. On that note, if you see us running around here, I don't want to speak for you guys, but if you see me, feel free to say hello.
Fit does
don't say hi
charge
to
for
me.
an autograph, by the
Don't
way.
say hi to me.
Don't look Aaron Fit in the eye. But if you see me, say hello. I always like meeting fans out and about. And
I'm kidding, guys. Say hi to me too.
By the way, Joe, I would assume your favorite World Series is 2003.
That's one of them. But the 08 World Series was a great one. You know, the Wonder Dogs winning the national title there. I also have a soft spot for 21-14 that year back in Rosenblatt.
Really?
So yeah,
Okay.
because I remember watching it on CBS and was like, this is wild. This is baseball? Like what is it's like
Baseball.
Yeah, it was played with a rubber ball. But regardless, so just extremely thankful to get to do this year after year, and thank you to you guys watching. And if you see us, say hello. And if you're coming out to Omaha, if it's your first time, especially, get ready to have the time of your life. I mean, it's a baseball carnival as much as it is a baseball tournament.
I think this is my 20th World Series, and still getting to town yesterday, and it's like, whoa, it still hits you. It doesn't get old.
20th World Series. We should have got cake or something.
We should.
There's still
I would
time.
assume this is the same number of World Series for me. So
Okay,
I
interesting.
think 2000.
We'll get a joint cake.
Yeah, we'll get a
There
little
you go.
birthday cake.
There
We'll
you
ask KP to get some birthday cake.
That's right.
By the
One
way,
more
I was gonna say. By the way, if you see us walking around,
He pulled a string on me.
I'm
That's
I'm
all
just
right.
taking control
It's okay.
here. If you see us walking around, you'll notice that we're wearing these special EvoShield Omaha 2025 shirts. Aaron's got one of their special hats. I've got one of their custom Chinook gloves they gave me. But thank you again to the Omaha Experience and the gang at Wilson, DeMarini, EvoShield, etc. They have some awesome new products. They've got brand new Omaha T-shirts. They have really cool designs. They've got an entire wall of gloves, and they've got plenty of other apparel. So go check them out. And by the way, as Joe mentioned earlier, it is air conditioned, which is very beneficial right now.
Trust me, you're going to want that air conditioning. Unless you have a neck fan like I do. I walk around like a retiree with the neck fan and the floppy hat.
I cannot get on board with the neck fan. They do not have neck fans at the Wilson store, by the way.
Yeah, don't expect that. Yeah. All right, folks. A couple thank yous on the way out here. Want to thank executive producer Christian Naro. Want to thank our friends at Hurrdat Sports, Cam and Sasha, not Shauna. Sasha, not Shauna.
It's a very
That's for
official
me.
title for CJ.
That's
man.
for me. Thank you to Wilson, everybody else who's helped us out here. For Kendall, Aaron, the whiz kid Bradley Smart, I'm Joe Healy. Enjoy the College World Series, everyone. We will talk to you later on this week.